I'm Tone Lanzillo, and I'd like to welcome you to Climate-Duluth. We have a very special guest today. His name is Andrew Boyd. Andrew is the co-creator and CEO of Climate Clock, which is sponsoring and coordinating the upcoming Climate Emergency Day on Monday, July 22nd. Also, Andrew is the author of a great book I highly recommend entitled I Want A Better Catastrophe, Navigating the Climate Crisis with Grief, Hope, and Gallows Humor, unquote. Thank you, Andrew. Great book.
Thank you.
In
Thank
fact,
you.
I just quoted several things in your book for an upcoming column, so I really appreciate it. Why don't we start, Andrew? Just tell us a little bit about Climate Clock, how it got started, and what its mission is.
Yeah, great. Thank you. And a pleasure to be here. Pleasure to be talking to the people of Duluth and Minnesota in the upper Midwest. I went to school in Michigan, so a little adjacency there. And my father grew up all over the Midwest. So thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be back home in a way. Yeah, so the Climate Clock started about 4 years ago. Basically, the way Bill McKibben puts it is that climate change is a timed test. If we win later, we lose. So we're on a very strict, very intense timeline. And we need to hold ourselves and particularly decision makers and corporate and government power holders accountable to that timeline. We need to do extremely bold transitions of our society and economy from a sort of ecocidal fossil fuel powered economy to one powered by clean, green renewables, offering good jobs to everybody in building that world. And we have to do that on a very intense timeline, basically by the end of this decade. And the clock tracks that timeline. And it is an organizing platform, a communication tool, a global network of people using the clock's science and the solutions that it's putting forward, and also tracking to make sure that their local governments and their national governments and global treaties reflect the timeline we need to be on, and making progress on regenerative agriculture, renewable energy, protecting indigenous land, achieving gender parity at national levels of government, which leads to better climate solutions, et cetera, et cetera. These systemic climate solutions that we need to preserve a livable planet and protect all that we love. So that's the Climate Clock. I have one here. I can sort of a portable version of it. There's both big ones in the centers of cities across the world: Rome, Korea, London, New York, as well as portable ones in the hands of frontline climate justice activists all over the world, including in Wisconsin, Minnesota, and elsewhere in the Midwest of the United States. So I can sort of show you that clock and show you how it works and why it's such a powerful and timely, relevant tool, if you would like.
Yeah, well, show us the Climate Clock. That'd be great. I can see the years, the days, the time, and the statistics, facts below it. Yeah.
So yeah, it's all there. It's like a portable scientific instrument. It's based on the gold standard of climate science, the UN's IPCC global community of scientists, and their most recent assessment report. So it's very grounded in what the science is telling us we must do. It has these two components, as you mentioned, the sort of in red, a deadline, what we were talking about, our sort of window within which we must act. And then, so we call that that we have one deadline, and then there's many solutions that we need to move forward, and we're tracking progress in real time on those solutions as well. So one deadline, many lifelines. The clock tells us what we need to do by when. And the by when, as we mentioned, is absolutely critical. So here we see 5 years, 2 days and a little and change left till the clock ticks over to another year. So as you mentioned, on Monday, it'll be flipping from 5 years to 4 years. And we're calling that Climate Emergency Day, and it's actions all over the world, in South Pacific islands in Fiji. Youth activists are, showing the dangers of rising seas and what they can do to those islands. You're doing things in Duluth. There's like 11 actions all throughout Wisconsin, for example, by 350. Wisconsin has got a lot of things going on, including demanding that the Wisconsin Attorney General sues the fossil fuel companies for the destruction that they've caused. There's going to be a big projection of the lifeline, the various solutions, and the deadline at the site where the big a big treaty to protect life itself. That's going to be taking place in Colombia, the country, in the fall. So there will be a big light projection in that location. And in Korea, where there's like 9 clocks in 9 cities all across Korea, there's a lot of beating the drumbeat around climate emergency. And then in like over a dozen countries in Africa. So all of the clocks in people's hands in the city's centers are all synchronized to the second and tracking this incredible, the important timeline that we're all on. They're all going to click over at the same time in a synchronized day of global action on Monday at noon Eastern. So I think then Duluth, that would be at 11 a.m. Eastern this Monday, July 22nd. Yeah, so that's Climate Emergency Day. And yeah.
Yeah. I want to thank you. This is such an engaging and innovative way to present things. Just wanted to share that last year when Duluth participated, we got the approval of city government. We projected the climate clock on the steam plant, which could be seen about a mile away. So it was, we really appreciate it. It was, yeah, we found
That's
some
fantastic.
tech people to do that. Yeah.
Fantastic. I don't think I know there was a lot of actions last year, so I didn't see everything, but I don't think I saw visuals of that. If you have one great photograph of that, I would love to see that. If you would share that or send me an article where
Sure.
that visual is, there and talked about, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. One of our people recorded, so I'll get you the recording. Where or when did your interest in the environment and climate change begin?
Well, I'm born. I have to breathe the air. I have to live in I have to live in this one beautiful home that we have. So you could say, from birth in a sort of cosmic way. But I would say around the big moments leading up to the Paris COP21 treaty signing, and that involved a lot of grassroots mobilization across the world and across the United States, and particularly here in New York City, with what is the largest climate march to date, like 400,000 people in the streets from all over the world, every walk of life. And that really energized me, and a lot of other people I know. And that's when the understanding became more widespread that this isn't just about transitioning energy systems, but it's about climate justice and about doing this in a way that rights historic wrongs and brings about a more just and equal and fair and better society, not just a broken and unfair one, just powered by the sun instead of by
Right.
coal. So yeah,
Yeah.
so that's where my interest took root, and went to Paris, went to Glasgow, and with colleagues, artists, activists, technicians, programmers, scientists, colleagues, we sort of launched the Climate Clock about 4 years ago.
4 years ago. Okay. Okay, cool. I know in my interviews with people involved in working on environmental climate change issues, it can often get challenging, sometimes frustrating. And so I always like to ask people like yourself, what or who motivates or inspires you as you do this work?
Well, you do right now, for example. You've been at this how long? How many decades have you been working for
I,
a better
yeah,
world?
I have to be honest, I started at the age of 62 when I moved to Duluth.
All right. Well,
So
late,
yeah,
here you are, late in life, starting, doing something that's really, really important. Like we always try to lay this off on the younger generation. They're going to save us. No, that's very irresponsible, right? It's up to all of us. We're the ones with the power. We're the ones who sort of haven't, done what we needed to do in the time we had. So it's like, I'm inspired by people's creativity, other people's resilience, other people's kindness, friendship, vision. So it's really in the human team. All folks who see this problem don't look away and figure out what they can do where they are with what they have, and to crookedly find our path, to fight the powers that are stopping us. We have the solutions. We know what they are. It's really a question of politics and power and money, and fighting those people who are trying to, basically run out the clock, literally, and make a few bucks along the way, or preserve their status, or preserve their, and who are not letting the solutions we need take root at the speed and scale that is needed. And so, part of Climate Emergency Day, we're calling on everyone in there at their local, state, national levels, not just to acknowledge the problem, not just to pay lip service to the solutions, but actually fund them at the level they need to be funded. The original Green New Deal was a $6 trillion package, and that's what was really, judged by the experts and by, people who were suffering from the impacts to be, the needed amount. And it ended up being, whatever the Inflation Reduction Act is what sort of we got from, from that great initiative, launched by AOC and young people across the USA, coming together in the Sunrise Movement to launch this Green New Deal. It was supposed to be $6 trillion. It ended up being, 350 or so billion. It's doing a lot of great work. It's transforming the rules of the economy. It's making, it's really juicing the transition from fossil fuels to solar and wind, and doing actually some advancing justice along the way, but nowhere near at the level that it needs to be. And who knows what happens with this next election and whether it will all be sort of put on hold. So we need to, fund this at the level needed. And that's something that people can do across their localities, their states, and the country, and, the world as well. So, yeah.
Right. I appreciate it. So for those of us like at the local level, whether it's be Duluth or say Minneapolis, St. Paul, whether it's with media or elected officials, any suggestions we can do in our local communities?
Well, you tell me. I don't know your local community. Here I can speak about what's happening in New York, and I can speak about what I know is happening in other places. But I know there's, I believe, a Line 3 pipeline that's being put through in, not right in Minneapolis, but in the region, the sort of outer regions of Minnesota. And there's been some extremely spirited attempts to block that, and it's met with, it's been a very tough fight. And so I think that is the highest level of calling to take that on, to block actually the things, these, we're already suffering with the fossil fuel infrastructure we have. The last thing we should be doing is building more. There should be an absolute moratorium across the country and across the world on new fossil fuel infrastructure, new coal plants or new oil or frack gas pipelines. That should just not be happening at all. So wherever that is happening, there's, what Naomi Klein refers to as sort of in the area of blockadia, sort of like a meta nation. People have risen up to stop those projects, and that there's a big fight in Minnesota. So that's one thing to do. And then, at the local level, there's, all sorts of things. And I think you've probably written about them, know them better than I, but, in general, there's like neighborhoods can come together to make climate resiliency plans. Local governments can, map out green laws, so that new buildings are, 100% renewable. They're, meet the best of the green codes. They can put, here in New York, where the city council is about to pass a public solar law that's using city-owned rooftops and city-owned parking lots and all of the city-owned property to deploy like serious solar at scale, and on, by 2030, which is sort of the timeline we need to be on. So that's a sort of model piece of legislation. Whatever, version of that is appropriate to Duluth and other localities, could sort of follow suit. So those are just some of the those are just some of the things. And, you know, obviously voting people into office who understand the urgency and the what's at stake here and have are very, you know, willing to do what is needed to, you know, protect us and everything we love. Yeah.
Right. Thank you. Yeah, we in the spring of 2021, a group of us lobbied and finally convinced our city council to pass a climate emergency resolution.
There you go.
So at least they're talking about it in city government. At the same time, the city hired its first sustainability officer. So there's been some slow progress. Um, and
Right.
we're trying to work within the system, but also we're looking what we can do outside the system to continue the conversation and push our leaders to do more, as you all talk about with Climate Emergency Day.
Mhm.
I guess my last question for you today is, yeah, given your experience, your writings, your organization, um, what do you think are the biggest challenges or several of the biggest challenges we face maybe over the next 5 or 6 years?
Well, let's talk about there's, you know, challenges at all realms, but let's say the one that sort of is most probably uppermost of mind is this national election. And, you know,
Okay.
the carbon pathway, you know, or the transition pathway under, you know, it's been specced out. I can send you, if you want to put it in your next article, kind of a graphic that shows the, you know, how we're trying to bend the emissions curve and what that will be likely be like, you know, what we actually need and what it will actually be like under Biden, another 4 years of a Biden presidency, or a Democratic presidency, and what it would be like under Trump. And, you know, there's like a vast difference. Like it's, you know, arguably within that gap between a Democratic climate regime and a Republican one that basically pulls us out of Paris and, you know, stops a lot of the decent work that's, you know, gotten launched under the Biden administration, stops that in its tracks. There's, you know, arguably, you know, tens of thousands of species will die. You know, disasters will happen all across the world. We, you know, will lose years that we can't afford to lose. So it's a huge inflection point. It's a huge fork in the road. So everything possible to ensure that a climate denying, climate delaying government doesn't come in would be one huge challenge. And then if it does, sort of how do we move forward as localities, as states, as companies, as you know, communities? How do we move forward in spite of the national government instead of because of it? You know, you know, without its helping to set better rules for the economy so that we can make that transition. So yeah, so that's one big challenge. And then so that's like in the political strategic realm. And, you know, just to remember that Trump pulled us out 8 years ago, and, you know, basically 1/3 of the US economy kind of was able to sort of ally itself and basically recommit on its own, independent of Washington, to stay in alignment with the Paris goals. So there's lots
Right.
of independent, you know, we're a federal system, and there's a lot of independent power centers that can move forward. Like California is not going to stop its forward momentum, and that just generally pulls the whole national economy and sometimes the global economy along with it. So there's still a lot of progress that can be made on climate in spite of that. So just that's worth noting as a challenge. And then I don't know, spiritually, or you know, I think it's such a, as you mentioned earlier, it's very challenging to the heart. You know, this is a huge problem. It feels very overwhelming. There's already impacts happening. You know, climate change is not a problem that is, you know, happening somewhere else, when else. It's happening now, and it's happening to all of us, you know, to different degrees. And that it can be very despair, you know, can lead to despair, dismay, hopelessness, a kind of paralysis and overwhelm, all of that. So it's sort of like battling those emotions. And I think we do that best by um, one, finding our people, finding the community of practice, our affinity group, our, you know, the folks that get it also, and that you can take strength from and give strength to, and kind of make action plans together and move things forward. So I think that's critical. Find your people who you can take action with and draw strength, you know, and be spiritually supported, emotionally supported by. Remember to take care of yourself along the way. Understand that, you know, there are, like, as the book you mentioned at the beginning, you know, I Want A Better Catastrophe mentioned that it's not like an all or nothing thing, that any kind of, every fraction of a degree matters, every, you know, every minute, every second counts. There's a lot of good we can do, even if, you know, we're going to get a real rough, you know, a rough bunch of decades. It really can matter. You know, there's a big difference between the worst catastrophe and a better catastrophe. So sort of understanding that allows you to be a bit, you know, not feel like you need to have, you know, it's like, you promised me a rose garden and I'm not getting it, so I'm not going to be involved at all. No, it's like, you know, no, there's good work to be done, even if it's not we're fixing everything kind of dream we might have had. And it's
Right.
absolutely essential that we do it. It could be the difference between, you know, survival and eventual, you know, achieving of a beautiful, more just world and extinction. So it's absolutely critical that we act smartly, act in a timely way, and, you know, take care of ourselves and our community as we proceed. So I don't know. So there's a challenge of the heart, and there's a challenge of this moment.
Yeah. Thank
Is that a little bit of guidance there?
you. Thank you very much. So, yeah, on behalf of Climate Duluth, really appreciate you taking a few moments with us today. Now, to others in Duluth and northern Minnesota, to not only support but hopefully participate in Climate Clock and Climate Emergency Day in the days and weeks and months to come. So, really appreciate it. Yeah.
Great. I'll just end with one of our key slogans, which is act in time. And if you want more information about Climate Emergency Day or Climate Clock, you know, we're on the web with all the information. You can even order one of these clocks that you can use in, you know, the classroom or in the streets, or in, you know, walk it into city council. And you can order it there, and that's at climateclock.world. Lots of information, all the science behind the numbers on this clock, how to get one yourself, how to participate in Climate Emergency Day, how to spread the word. It's all there. And lots of photos of clocks from all around the world and how people are using them to do just that. So lots of storytelling there to take inspiration from, and then step into it yourself.
Great.
So, yeah,
Thank you very much.
thank you so much. And Duluth, a pleasure
Thank
to
you.
talk with you. Thanks for being part of this. And yeah, we'll see you
Great.
on the
We'll see.
interweb and on the streets.
You got it.
Okay.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Andrew. Take care. Bye bye now.